Well, hi everyone, and greetings from Northern Michigan. This is Bob the Science Guy. For the last several weeks, I've been examining Dr. Andrew Wakefield and his fraudulent study linking the MMR vaccination with intestinal disorders and autism. We've gone through the flawed design of the study, the falsified information, the conflicts of interest, and the hopes of a personal financial windfall that Dr. Wakefield had anticipated as a result of the vaccine panic caused by his study. We finished up with the General Medical Council investigation of Dr. Wakefield, which resulted in him being struck from the rolls of British physicians. In this episode, we'll have a look at the follow-up of this disaster. What happened to Dr. Wakefield? What does the medical community and the scientific community say about a proposed link between the MMR vaccination and autism? And finally, where should you go from here for more information on the follow-up of Dr. Wakefield, and where am I going to take this series? So let's cue up the music and get started. Now let's begin with a quick follow-up of Dr. Andrew Wakefield. He was asked to leave the Royal Free Hospital in late 2001. He not only left the hospital, he left the country. He moving to Austin, Texas. In 2005, he and some other researchers, if that's what you want to call them, established a small research and treatment facility for autism called Thoughtful House. At Thoughtful House, he continued to subject children to endoscopy and other diagnostic testing in pursuit of his goal of discrediting the MMR vaccination. This continued until he lost his medical license in 2010 as a result of his fraudulent MMR study from 1998. He left Thoughtful House at that time, and so did a number of his fellow researchers. But I've really devoted enough time to Andrew Wakefield. I won't call him doctor anymore because he lost his license. I think it's time now to go on to the effects of his fraudulent study and the impact on the public health of basically not only the United States and the United Kingdom, but the rest of the world. The medical community and the scientific community has not been idle sitting on its hands since 1998. We've actually had a number of new studies, and this is just one of them from the Mayo Clinic here in the United States. Let's go over it real quick. This is actually a report of a study done in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Unlike Dr. Wakefield, who only looked at 12 children, this study looked at the health records of over 95,000 children. And we can have a look at that study right here. In the United States at the time of this study, we were using something called the ICD9 Code for a diagnosis. Now, the ICD9 Code consisted of a 3-digit number, which was your major diagnosis group. And then there was a decimal point and 2 decimal places afterwards. And you could get a very specific diagnosis from this code. For example, I believe 401 was hypertension, and 401.01 was hypertension with cardiac involvement, or something or other like that. It was a very, very specific coding system, to the point that if you sprained your left ankle on a spacecraft in flight, there was a specific 5-digit code that covered that injury and that injury alone. So it's very easy to take this insurance data, which is really quite extensive, and search it for all diagnosis codes related to autism spectrum disorder, to include Asperger's syndrome. Furthermore, there's another billing code for receiving an MMR vaccination, so we know exactly of this group how many of the children were vaccinated and when they were vaccinated. So let's have a brief look at the results of this study. Of the nearly 96,000 children in this study, there were 994 children that were identified as having autism. There were 1,929 children that were identified as having an older sibling that had autism. So basically, 1% of the children in the study had autism, and 2% of the children in the study had an older sibling that had autism. 6.9% of those children had autism if an older sibling had autism. versus 0.9% had autism if their older siblings did not have autism. So you have nearly 7 times the chance of developing autism if you have an older sibling that has autism. This does suggest a familial association. However, you're looking at numbers on the order of 1 to 2% overall that have autism. This is a far cry from the huge numbers quoted by the anti-vaccination people. Now let's turn our attention to the MMR vaccination rate. If you were part of the group that had an older sibling that did not have autism, your chance of having autism was 0.9%. The vaccination rates in that group for the MMR were 84% at 2 years and 92% at 5 years. Pretty high vaccination rate. Now, if you look at the group that had an older sibling with autism, now recall, this is the group that had a 6.9% incidence of autism. The vaccination rates were 73 and 86%. So this group, which had a much higher rate of autism, had a lower rate of vaccination than the group that had the lower rate of autism. Now, I'll have this full study linked in the description, and you can look through the entire volume of the study yourself. Now, let's go back to the Mayo Clinic autism paper. In addition to this study from JAMA, it indicated that there were 25 studies in addition to that study that disproved any connection between autism and the MMR vaccination. Now, if you truly want to do your own research and seek the truth, here are the studies. You can look at them yourself. Now let's go over where the series is going to go from here. First, the next part of the series that I'm going to do concerns a woman that tragically lost her child following a vaccination. This woman went on to head an anti-vaccination movement. She went on to promote the idea that the vaccinations themselves were more dangerous than the diseases they sought to prevent. She felt that living a healthy lifestyle prevented disease more efficiently than a vaccination would, and that vaccines damaged the body's ability to fight off disease. Now, this is Dr. Suzanne Humphreys. She and Dr. Wakefield have done a great deal to damage the public health of the world. And Dr. Humphreys will have a series of her own, much like the one I did on Dr. Wakefield, in good time. But that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about this woman, Loretto Little, the vaccine liberator, who started the American anti-vaccination movement at the turn of the 20th century. In our next episode, we're going to talk about her and her movement. But like many things in the United States, we find the origins of the anti-vaccination movement in Europe, specifically Great Britain. The anti-vaccination movement in Great Britain was the result of mandatory vaccination laws passed in the early to mid-19th century, specifically for smallpox. And they talked about the vaccinations causing disease, enriching pharmaceutical companies, enriching doctors, and a government conspiracy to cover up the side effects of vaccinations, which apparently included people turning into cows because they were vaccinated for smallpox using fluid from cowpox pustules. I hope you'll tune in because it should be an interesting series. Now, if you want some more information on Andrew Wakefield, I suggest you go over to Jeff Holliday's channel. His playlist, Inoculated Against Vax, I felt was very good. I watched the whole series. Now, episodes 1 and 2 have to do with Dr. Wakefield and the study and the aftermath with the General Medical Council. I felt that they needed to be fleshed out a little bit, which is why I did this series. But his episodes 3 through 7 deal with the aftermath of this study and its effect on the world and subsequent events with Dr. Wakefield. So if you want some more information, head over there. Now, you can just click on the link in the description and go straight over. And when you are there, if you watch his videos, put a note in there that say, hey, Bob the Science Guy sent me. So in the meantime, thank you very much for following me through this series. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it useful. Follow up with Jeff Holliday And please tune in for my new series exploring the origins of the anti-vax movement. So, this is Bob the Science Guy signing out from Northern Michigan. Thanks again for stopping by, and remember, hit that little like, subscribe, and bell icon down there. I'd really appreciate it. And hope you'll join me with Team Bob. Take care, my friends.